International Donors Conference Together for the People of Turkey and Syria, which is going to be in this room and also online. I want to begin with some of the housekeeping rules. First of all, we have translations into and from English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, Arabic, and Turkish languages. Also, please note that the conference is web streamed, so I welcome also our audiences online. And I would also like to call on the photographers, cameramen, and press now to leave the room so that we can start earnest. Thank you. So, dear President, dear Prime Minister, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm grateful for the response of the international community to this call of ours, made together with the Swedish presidency, together with the Turkish authorities. First, we want to express our sincere condolences to the victims of families and loved ones and wish to quick recovery to the wounded. We stand with you during this time of grief. Second, we want the people of Turkey and Syria to know that you can count on the unwavering solidarity and support in these difficult times. We will assist you in the early recovery, relief, and reconstruction efforts following the disastrous earthquakes of last month. The immediate reaction of the region, Europe, and the entire world has been impressive. In the wake of this unprecedented catastrophe, resources have been mobilized to rescue, to help, and to shelter those in need. But of course, our help does not stop here. It is clear that we will need to do significantly more to overcome the human suffering and alleviate all the damages. And we as international community stand ready to take our share on trying to help Turkey and Syria to overcome this tragedy. Today's Donors Conference has the ambition to take this next step towards recovery and reconstruction. The damages and the needs are massive, if not unprecedented, and must be tackled urgently. The European Commission is ready to do everything in its power to help. We are ready to participate in building new houses, schools, hospitals, and other critical infrastructure so that normal life can return to these regions in Turkey. We will support public services and businesses to restart. We are equally committed to provide humanitarian and early recovery assistance to the millions of Syrians who have suffered the consequences of the earthquakes, in addition to the suffering of the 15-year-long war. This is the kind of solidarity we are here to demonstrate today. Through this International Donors Conference, we have the opportunity to announce our support, help our partners to manage the impact of this earthquake, and build resilience to future natural disasters. I'm looking forward to your pledges. And it is now my pleasure to give the floor to my dear colleague Johan Forssell from Sweden.
Thank you, Commissioner. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be here today at this pledging conference initiated by the Swedish Prime Minister and the President of the European Commission. And I would like to thank all of you for attending. And in addition to the people that are present in this room, I know that many people and civil society organizations are following the conference online. And on behalf of the Swedish Presidency, you are all very welcome. The destruction following the earthquake is enormous, and the consequences for human lives devastating. The economies of the countries that have been struck will be affected for a very long period of time. And when we traveled to Ankara to prepare for this conference together with our Turkish counterparts, Commissioner Varhelyi and I received a warm welcome, but also heartbreaking information about the suffering and the needs of the people affected. And in this time of need, when disaster hits, it is crucial that the international community comes together and shows unity. It is important for the people affected, but also important for the multilateral system. I'm looking forward to the pledging session where the European and broader international community will showcase their support with the people in their time of need. Commissioner Vaheli, I hand the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And now let me invite to the stage our President, President Ursula von der Leyen from the European Commission. President, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Foreign Minister Cavusoglu, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. When the earth started to shake in Turkey and Syria, it was cold, it was dark and raining. People were sleeping in the warmth of their homes when the sky came crashing down. The pain of the loss of life is inexpressible. More than 48,000 people dead. Thousands still missing. Millions homeless. In minutes, cities and communities were turned to mounds of rubble and dust. Entire families were lost. Their beds turned into coffins. When the sun rose that morning, the people of Turkey and Syria were in shock and mourning. The whole world held its breath. But tens of thousands sprang to action to rescue and save those who were still alive beneath the devastation, to heal and to give shelter to those who lost everything. Thousands volunteers working day and night in the dust and in the cold, saving hundreds of lives, screaming of joy whenever they found a child alive under the rubble. The first responders performed miracles in the midst of tragedy. They inspired hope where there is so much pain. This is a story of catastrophic loss, and it is a story of heroic solidarity among the people of Turkey, the people of Syria, and your friends around the world. On that morning, many rushed to help. The European Union, too, immediately activated its civil protection mechanism. Hours after the first earthquake, European rescue teams arrived in Turkey, just as a second earthquake, almost as powerful as the first, caused even more death. 1,652 European rescues and 111 search dogs helped the local heroes. Hungarian firefighters, for example, found Selma, a Turkish woman 5 meters beneath the collapsed building where she lay for 47 hours. It was in the middle of the night when they heard her cries with -9 degrees Celsius outside. They got her out alive, and Selma's story of survival is one of many. Polish and Bulgarian teams found and saved an entire family of 4. And the first survivor a French medical team treated was a 3-month pregnant Syrian refugee. For over 10 days, they searched the rubble. At Gaziantep airport, there were rescue and medical teams from all over the world. Many were crying. They were exhausted. They hadn't slept for days. I think we owe them an overwhelming gratitude. Today's impressive attendance at this donors conference testifies to the international community's strong response. The whole world mobilized to support the people of Turkey and Syria. Because the scale of this tragedy is so large, that no one country or agency alone could have done anywhere near what we have done together. 6 weeks later, the scale of the devastation from the earthquakes is still being uncovered, and international mobilization has not stopped. Tents and clothes and food and medical supplies continue to arrive. Yet the needs of the survivors are still massive and must be tackled with urgency. The earthquakes affected a region in Turkey home to 13.5 million people and an unknown number in Syria. Millions are now homeless and living in tents as the winter drags on. We need to sustain our support and help the survivors not just to survive, but to rebuild their lives. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to mobilize for reconstruction. Homes and schools and hospitals must be rebuilt with the highest standards of seismic safety. Water and sanitation and other critical infrastructure must be repaired. Public services and businesses need capital to restart so that people can earn a living. We will hear later from the UNDP a presentation of the first estimates of damages, but we already know the challenge is immense. Larger than any one of us alone can master, but together we can master the challenge. And that is why, together with the Turkey authorities and the Swedish presidency of the Council, the European Commission has organized this pledging conference. No one can fill the void left by those who lost their lives. Yet together we can reconstruct and rebuild. The European Union and its member states and financial institutions have put together a strong pledge. I am pleased to announce that the European Commission alone will support Turkey with €1 billion for the post-earthquake reconstruction. We also pledge a further package of €108 million for humanitarian assistance and early recovery in Syria. On top of this, our member states and the European financial institutions will make additional pledges. That comes on top of the €21 million in humanitarian assistance that we have already mobilized. So I invite all nations and all donors to contribute, to honor the memory of the lives lost, to honor the heroism of the first responders, and to sustain the hope of the survivors. Thank you very much, and I now give the floor to the Prime Minister of Sweden.
Thank you so much, Ursula, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. 42 days ago, the lives of millions of people in Turkey and Syria changed completely in just a matter of seconds. Within a few minutes, hundreds of thousands of people lost their homes, their everyday routines, their sense of normalcy and belonging. In the following days, it became painfully clear that hundreds of thousands of people lost someone they loved. Over 50,000 lives were lost. As a European Union and as members of the international community, we cannot take away the grief or the pain. We cannot fill the voids from the loved ones that were lost in the earthquakes. But we can do one thing. We can turn our words of condolences and solidarity into action. That is why we meet here in Brussels today. That is also the reason for Sweden, holding the current presidency of the European Union and the EU Commission to arrange this meeting for the people of Turkey and Syria. This conference has one clear goal: to make the struggle of rebuilding everyday lives and communities easier. We need to make sure the response from the international community is strong, efficient, and coordinated. The challenge to rebuild cannot be exaggerated. The affected area in Turkey and Syria equals actually the countries of Belgium and Netherlands together. Whole cities and societies need to be reconstructed, and the survivors will need to help to return to a slightly more normal life. We still do not have precise figures on all the physical destruction, but we're talking about large sums. The total economic impact will be devastating and long-term. However, we know one more thing, that when the EU and the international community makes a strong effort together, we can make an enormous difference. This was clearly manifested by the large number of EU countries and other nations quickly sending search and rescue teams, tents, field hospitals, generators, and other support to the people affected. From Sweden, we quickly sent teams of experts and immediate relief. I was impressed by the strong will also of private individuals, NGOs, and the business community to help as well. The initial and fast response to the earthquakes must be followed by solid support for continued humanitarian relief, recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. My own country, Sweden, will today pledge 500 million Swedish kronor, equivalent to 45 million euros, to support humanitarian and reconstruction efforts in Turkey and humanitarian assistance and rehabilitation in Syria. This conference has one clear goal: to make the struggle of rebuilding everyday lives community easier. We will channel our funds through long-standing partners, the UNDP, the UNICEF, the UNHCR, and the WFP. This conference provides the EU and the wider international community with an opportunity to show the affected people in Turkey and Syria that we will stand by you as you rebuild your everyday lives. Our job here today is to make sure the EU and the wider international community provide adequate and effective support to make these challenges easier to face. The solidarity with the people of Turkey and Syria must today be transformed from words into action. This is why we have invited you all here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Thank you, President. And now it is our honor to give the floor to His Excellency, the President of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan. But before his address, we would like to run a little video put together by our Turkish friends. Thank you.
4:17 a.m., February 6th, 2023. A magnitude 7.7 earthquake strikes the Pazarcık district of Kahramanmaraş. Turkey was face-to-face with the disasters of the century. Not one, two, or three, 11 major cities in southern Turkey were in shock. Many survivors were buried underneath the rubble. But the horror wasn't over. 9 hours after the initial tremor, another powerful magnitude 7.6 earthquake rocked the Elbistan district of Kahramanmaraş, destroying already damaged buildings and further complicating the dire situation on the ground. In a total of 105 seconds, the lives of 14 million people were changed forever. The historical monuments that grace the cities of Gaziantep and Hatay were lost to the pages of time. An area of 110,000 square kilometers, or roughly equivalent to the sizes of Bulgaria, Austria, Hungary, or the Netherlands, a region bigger than 90 countries, were hit hard by the quakes whose impact is equal to hundreds of atomic bombs. The death toll has reached 49,000. More than 279,000 buildings had collapsed or were severely damaged. This was an unprecedented disaster.
Afet bölgesi ve olağanüstü hal ilanı kararı aldı.
Search and rescue teams were immediately deployed to the area. In the first moments of the disaster, President Erdogan assured victims that they would not be left alone. He assured his people that all destroyed homes would be rebuilt within a year and no one would be left homeless. The rebuilding process throughout the quake-hit areas quickly started and continues rapidly. A nation mobilized along with the state. After organizing the state's response, President Erdogan also made a global call to the international community. More than 90 countries sent close to 10,000 personnel to assist the hundreds of thousands of local staff in one of the most comprehensive search and rescue missions of all time.
Zeynep tamam. Okay. Daniel here. Korkma, okay?
The unwritten story of the nation's rebuilding and recovery will become its greatest success in the next century.
Now I would like to invite Mr. President Erdogan, President of Turkey, to take the floor.
Değerli Komisyon Başkanı,
President of
Sayın
the
Başbakan,
European Commission,
saygıdeğer
Prime
bakanlar,
Minister, honorable ministers,
kıymetli katılımcılar,
distinguished
sizleri
participants,
şahsım ve milletim adına
I would like to extend
kalbi
my
duygularımla
warmest greetings
selamlıyorum.
to all of you personally and
Avrupa
on
Birliği
behalf of my
Komisyonu
people.
Başkanı Sayın Ursula von der
I would
Leyen
like to thank
ve
Ms.
Avrupa Birliği
Ursula von
Konseyi
der
Genel
Leyen
Başkanlığını yürüten
and Mr.
İsveç
the
Başbakanı
President of the European Commission
Sayın
and Mr.
Ulf
Ulf
Kristersson'a
Kristersson, Prime
düzenledikleri bu
Minister of
konferans
Sweden,
için
which
teşekkür
holds
ediyorum.
the presidency of the Council of
Hepinizin
the
bildiği
European
üzere
Union, for
6
hosting this
Şubat'ta
International Donors Conference.
ülkemiz insanlık
As you all
tarihinin
know, on the
en büyük
6th of
tabii
February,
afetlerinden
our country
biriyle
was hit
sarsıldı.
by one of the most severe
Aynı
natural
bölgede
disasters
9
in the
saat
history
arayla
of
meydana
mankind.
gelen
Two
7,7
severe
ve
earthquakes of
7,6 büyüklüğündeki
7.7
iki
and
şiddetli
7.6
deprem
magnitude
14 milyon
occurring
vatandaşımızın
9 hours
yaşadığı
apart in the same
11
region
ilimizde
caused
çok ciddi
significant
yıkıma
destruction
ve
and loss of
can
life
kaybına yol
in
açtı.
11 provinces with a
Enkazların
population
altında
of
kalan
14 million.
50.096 insanımız hayatını kaybederken
50,096 people
115
lost
bin
their lives
vatandaşımız
under
ise
the debris,
yaralı olarak
and
kurtuldu.
we rescued
Vefat eden tüm
115,000
kardeşlerimize
citizens
Allah'tan rahmet,
injured.
yakınlarına ve halkımıza
May our
sabır,
deceased brothers and
yaralılarımıza
sisters rest in
acil
peace.
şifalar niyaz ediyorum.
I wish strength and patience to
Aralarında
their loved
sizlerin,
ones and our
vatandaşlarının
people and a
olduğu,
speedy recovery
hayatını
to the
kaybeden
wounded. I also would like to extend my condolences for 6,807 foreign nationals, our friends, some of whom were your citizens, and for Syrian brothers and sisters who lost their lives. Scientists describe this catastrophe as the most violent tremor that has ever occurred on land, on Earth. As a matter of fact, aftershocks, some of which have reached the magnitude of independent earthquakes, are still ongoing. Some of our provinces affected by the earthquake have been struggling with extreme rainfall and flood in recent days. Despite these unfavorable weather conditions, we are doing our utmost to meet the shelter, food, and other types of needs of earthquake victims. In addition to all relevant public institutions, our municipalities, non-governmental organizations, and volunteers are working around the clock, working really hard in the region. We are about to complete damage assessment. In 11 provinces in the earthquake zone, the number of buildings which have either collapsed or which are to be demolished promptly and which are heavily damaged is 298,000, and the number of independent units in these buildings is 876,000. According to our initial calculations, it is apparent that the cost of the destruction caused by the earthquake will reach $104 billion. It is impossible for any country, regardless of its economic state, to cope with a disaster of this scale alone. Turkey, a country that has been rushing to the help of those in need around the world for years, saw the support of 11,320 personnel from 90 countries immediately after the earthquake. Friends and brothers and sisters shared the pain of our nation by phone, by sending messages, or coming to our country in person. And assistance from around 130 countries reached the victims of the earthquake. 36 field hospitals were set up thanks to you, our valuable friends, and contributed to the treatment of the wounded. I would like to express my gratitude to each and every one of you, personally and on behalf of my country and my people. We will never forget the solidarity shown by all our friends, the European Union with its institutions, member and candidate countries, United Nations, and other international organizations during these difficult days. This conference is another indication of the strong foundations of the relations between our peoples. Your contributions during the conference will help us in our efforts to heal the wounds and achieve a complete recovery from the earthquake. Because the real struggle, our real struggle, starts now. We will reconstruct and revive all our cities destroyed in the earthquake. We will reconstruct their infrastructure, superstructure, workplaces, and historical and cultural assets. Our objective is to build high-quality and safe buildings that will meet the housing needs in the entire earthquake zone within a year. We plan to hand over 319,000 houses in the first year and 650,000 houses in total. We laid the foundations, we broke ground, and started construction in the areas where the locations were decided based on ground and survey studies. While we do this, we are simultaneously setting up tent cities, container cities, and prefabricated structures. And inshallah, within 2 months, we will set up 108,000 containers and have 500,000 people settled in these containers. Distinguished participants, We are a nation that believes in the power of solidarity and the blessing of sharing. Throughout history, we have rushed to the help of everyone in need without making any discrimination, regardless of anyone's belief, ethnic origin, or language. And during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, we have provided medical aid and equipment to 160 countries and 12 international organizations that made a request from our country to our country. And we opened our doors and hearts to all people who had to migrate from conflict zones such as Syria and Ukraine. At the moment, we are hosting more than 4 million refugees, 3.5 million of whom are Syrian. And today, as we are healing the wounds of the disaster of the century in our country, we stand in solidarity with the Syrian people affected by the earthquake. We are doing everything to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian assistance through land and air to the earthquake victims in Syria by third parties and other countries. And we will keep doing this in the future as well. As I conclude my speech, I would like to thank you, our friends, who provided assistance to our people round the clock, who supported our search and rescue operations with their teams, and who stood by us in these difficult days. I wish that the conference will be auspicious for our country and nation. I would like to extend my best wishes and best wishes of my people to you all. Thank you very much and take care.
Dear President von der Leyen, dear President Erdogan, dear Prime Minister Christensen, thank you very much for your opening remarks. With this now, we close the first session and we turn into the second one when we will discuss the impact and the recovery. Thank you. So let me turn now to the second session where we are first to hear from the impact of the devastating earthquake and also the subsequent recovery efforts. I'm particularly grateful that my fellow Commissioner, Commissioner Lenarčič, is here today with us and who has went immediately to Turkey, visited the region, and he will address the conference now and will tell us about what he has found there, to be followed by Mr. Steiner from the UNDP, who is going to be representing the United Nations address and who will also provide us with the immediate humanitarian assistance that was carried out in Syria. So, please, Janez, you have the floor.
President von der Leyen, Prime Minister Christensen, Minister Çavuşoğlu, Administrator Steiner, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this is a disaster of immense proportions. I was in Gaziantep a few days after the earthquake struck, and I witnessed firsthand the overwhelming devastation and the magnitude of emergency. I saw how it has affected not just the Turkish population, but also the Syrian refugees within the local community. Turkey, as we were reminded by President Erdogan just now, hosts the largest number of Syrian refugees in the world. Now, after having fled a brutal war and finally beginning to rebuild their lives are again turned upside down, along with the lives of those who welcomed and supported them. I could also see on the ground how Europe has reacted as one, efficiently and fast, in the face of this disaster. In the immediate days after the event, the EU civil protection mechanism sprang into action. Over 30 search and rescue teams and 7 medical teams from 21 member states and 3 participating states rushed to help those in need. For the people of Syria, this is a disaster upon disaster. After 12 long years of war, over 15 million people were already in need of humanitarian aid before the earthquakes. That's over 3 times the population of Ireland, for instance. It's hard to imagine the impossible hardships these people are now going through following this latest tragedy. We must support them in every way possible. Like in Turkey, in the days and weeks following the earthquakes, member states have stepped up to provide people in Syria with everyday items so key to survival to those who have lost everything: tents, heaters, food, medicines, winter clothing, medical equipment, and more. In addition, the EU has further stepped up its humanitarian assistance to people in Syria and will be announcing additional funding today. Thanks to this funding, for instance, Fatima and her 3-year-old son, now living in a collective shelter after losing their home in the earthquakes, they are now able to have medical consultations. Thanks to this funding, vulnerable women who are at great risk now of cholera outbreaks in these shelters, like 67-year-old Hasna, can now get hygiene kits. We have ensured this support has reached people in both government-controlled and non-government-controlled areas, because we must help those in need wherever they are. However, we know that simply providing aid in the immediate aftermath of this disaster is not enough. The people of Syria need support with basic services. These services have been devastated from years of crippling conflict, leaving people even more vulnerable than ever. That means we have to work on rehabilitation of basic water infrastructure, making sure children can go to school, ensuring that people have livelihoods rather than being dependent on handouts. In short, we need to build people's resilience through early recovery, as already mentioned by President von der Leyen. This is why we will maintain our support to the Syrian people with the annual Donors Conference in Brussels, raising funds for the Syrian people on June 14th here in Brussels. We must continue to help those suffering the effects of these devastating earthquakes across Syria and Turkey. We must not forget them in their struggle. We must not leave anyone behind. That is why your support today is so crucial. I encourage you to pledge generously to help those in desperate need. Together, we must continue to help people of Turkey and Syria in this moment of hardship. Together, we can demonstrate Europe at its best through European solidarity in action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Lenarčič. And now it is my pleasure to give the floor to Achim Steiner, the Under-Secretary General of the UNDP Administrator and UNDP Administrator, Vice Chair of the UN Sustainable Development Group. The floor is yours.
Çavuşoğlu, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. On behalf of the United Nations Development System, and it is in fact strongly represented also here by a number of my colleagues who I have not discovered where they are in the room, but I know that Kathy Russell from UNICEF, Filippo Grandi, UNHCR, and other colleagues are here, many teams from the UN family, the resident coordinator of our UN country team in Syria, who will also address you later, our resident representative from Turkey. We are all here to express, first of all, our sincere gratitude to the European Commission and the Swedish Presidency of the Council of the European Union for organizing this vital and extremely timely event as communities across Turkey and Syria face the darkest moments. The video not only reminded me of some of those images in the first few hours, that hand holding on to somebody buried under rubble, the sheer terror in the face of children. I think we all know that an earthquake which strikes and destroys literally within seconds entire lives, families, it changed not only Turkey, but I think also our appreciation of what can happen to a nation literally in the blink of an eye. In Turkey, it is estimated that 3.3 million people are displaced countrywide, with approximately 2 million people living in temporary accommodation. Some 650,000 housing units, apartments and houses have been destroyed. In Syria, over 500,000 people, 500,000 people have been made homeless by the earthquakes. In the wake of 12 years of conflict and crisis, the number of people in need of humanitarian assistance in Syria was already at its highest levels even before this terrible earthquake hit, at more than 50 million people, while over 90% of the population in Syria today lives below the poverty line. Still, the largest internal displacement crisis in the world, the affected areas in Syria had large populations of internally displaced peoples, while Turkey has generously hosted 3.7 million Syrians under temporary protection over the past decade. And as Secretary General Antonio Guterres has so often said, it is an extraordinary gesture of generosity and solidarity. Taking the situation as a whole, millions of survivors are currently suffering from the trauma of the disaster and require support that goes beyond the emergency. The EU and its member states have demonstrated their leadership by rapidly responding to the disaster. The United Nations system continues to deploy emergency teams and relief operations in both countries. Our response has prioritized